You know that moment when you walk into a family gathering still peeling off your coat and your kid immediately finds a corner to curl into with their tablet. While relatives raise their eyebrows, you hear a whispered comment about kids these days, and your great uncle's face falls into that familiar look of disapproval. Your stomach tightens with the tension of being judged. You're caught, having to choose between protecting your child's regulation and satisfying outdated social expectations. That mix of embarrassment, defensiveness, and worry hits fast. Welcome back to Project Parenthood. I'm your host, Dr. Nanika Coor. Each week I'll help you raise kids in ways that are compassionate, respectful, anti-oppressive, and grounded in connection and community. Today, I'm talking about the friction that flares when your child-centered, respectful parenting choices, especially around technology use, meet the older generation's traditional expectations. Before I dive in, notice what's happening inside you as you anticipate this topic. Maybe there's some tension in your shoulders or a flutter in your chest. Perhaps you feel protective or irritated or a pit of dread bracing for family conflict. Let those sensations be there without trying to shift them. As you listen to this episode, see if you can watch whatever arises with kindness and curiosity, just like you're neutrally observing clouds drift by in the sky. Let's get into it. When your child slips into that corner with their tablet, your mind floods with worries. Will relatives think they're being rude? Are you the only parent who lets their kid regulate this way? To you, that device is part of a thoughtful plan to help your child settle their nervous system during a jarring transition into a loud, crowded space. To an older family member, it looks like disrespect, poor manners, or proof that you've quote-unquote lost control of your child. What seems like a simple disagreement about a screen becomes a flashpoint where different values, different lived histories, and different understandings of children collide. Your child experiences the tablet as an anchor, something predictable that helps them manage sensory overload, anxious activation, or neurodivergent overwhelm. But many relatives interpret that same behavior through the lens of their own upbringing. They're expecting enthusiastic greetings, eye contact, conversation, and visible sociability the moment you walk in the door. They assume that a child who withdraws or needs help regulating is choosing disinterest or being impolite, without understanding your child's nervous system or the way they process their world. The device becomes an easy place to assign blame. When you're parenting a neurodivergent child, or even raising a child who's Black, Indigenous, multiracial, or part of another marginalized group, the stakes feel even higher. Screens might not simply be entertainments in those moments. They can be part of a survival strategy in environments that can be overstimulating, unpredictable, or for some children, even subtly hostile. When a relative criticizes your child's coping tool, it might land on you as a parenting critique, and that can feel like a dismissal of your child's very real needs, and of the intentional emotional labor you pour into helping them move through a world that isn't built with them in mind. And then there's also the pressure you carry in your own body. You might have grown up being taught that good behavior was a requirement for safety, acceptance, or belonging. So you may feel an old urge to smooth things over, to present your child in a way that reassures your elders, or to avoid being perceived as permissive. At the same time, you're actually deeply committed to protecting your child's dignity and supporting the regulation strategies that genuinely help them. The tension of trying to hold both can stretch you thin as you try to manage family expectations while staying connected to your child's real needs. This tug-of-war between external judgment, internalized expectations, generational norms, and your child's real-time nervous system is exhausting. And if it keeps replaying without support, it can lead to shame, guilt, or disconnect in relationships where you most want trust and understanding to grow. There's a lot going on underneath these conflicts, and most of them operate beneath everyone's conscious awareness. First, there's your child's nervous system needs. Many kids rely on predictable tools to regulate big internal shifts. A screen can offer structure, focus, and a sense of control in situations that feel overwhelming. Family gatherings often bring bright lights, overlapping conversations, shifting expectations, and unpredictable social demands. For neurodivergent kids especially, this sensory overload can be intense. What looks like quote-unquote rudeness or quote-unquote disengagement to a relative may actually be your child working hard to stay grounded. Second, there's the fact that generational meaning-making is shaped by cultural norms. Older relatives often come from child-rearing traditions that valued obedience, immediate sociability, and visible politeness. In many families, these expectations were tied to safety, respectability, and assimilation pressures. A child who needs time, space, or tools to warm up may be read as disrespectful because their behavior doesn't align with inherited ideas of what good children do. These interpretations aren't usually about bad intentions, just ingrained cultural operating systems that prioritize adult comfort, convenience, and control. Third, it's important to remember that systemic pressures loom large. Parents raising Black, Indigenous, multiracial, disabled, queer, or neurodivergent children are usually moving through the world with heightened vigilance. You know how quickly your child's behavior can be misread in broader society. That awareness can make critical comments from relatives land sharply, stirring your protective instincts as you scan your environment for judgment. You can feel torn between wanting to shield your child's nervous system on the one hand and wanting to avoid negative assumptions about your family on the other. And fourth, there can be generationally conflicting norms around autonomy, privacy, and consent. In earlier generations, a child's image, voice, and body were often treated as extensions of the adults around them. Sharing photos or insisting on certain physical social performances felt natural, because children weren't regarded as people with rights to privacy or self-determination. Today, you're trying to raise a child who understands consent, not only about who touches their body and when, but also consent about when and how their image is shared digitally. When a relative reaches for their phone or insists on a hug or a photo, it can sometimes feel like your child's boundaries are being overridden. You're not only responding to the moment, but also resisting an older framework that treated children's bodies and stories as communal property. Given all these layers, it may be that the tension you feel isn't a simple disagreement about a device. It's a collision of nervous system needs, generational habits, cultural expectations, and evolving understandings of autonomy. Recognizing these dynamics helps you step out of shame and into calm. When you choose connection, regulation, respect for privacy, and collaboration, you're not being permissive. You're supporting your child's developing brain and dignity in ways that strengthen trust and resilience. So how can you navigate these generational conflicts in a connected way? Here are some practices to try. 1, you can prepare your child and yourself before the gathering. Give your kiddo a heads up about what the environment may feel like. Offer choices that remind them of their agency. You might say, if you start feeling overwhelmed, your tablet will be in this bag. You can take breaks whenever you need to. And let yourself know the same thing. You get to step away, take a sip of water, and reset too. 2, as much as is possible, manage expectations and boundaries in advance. Send a message to your family members ahead of time. Something like, screens help my child regulate in busy spaces. If you see them using their tablet, they're taking care of their nervous system. That can reduce on-the-spot conflict. You're giving a path for understanding without seeking permission. If a family member insists on debating it, you can say something like, I'm not discussing parenting decisions today. Then shift the conversation. Keep it firm and warm. 3, try to create a sensory-friendly landing zone. Identify a quiet room or a corner that your child can access. Bring noise-reducing headphones, fidgets, or a familiar blanket or toy. This helps your child feel like they have options beyond powering through discomfort. A predictable retreat area supports autonomy and reduces meltdowns. 4, you can protect your child's digital consent with clear communication. If someone reaches for their phone to snap a photo, step in gently. Try, my child gets to decide what images of them are shared. It's fine for you to keep this photo for yourself, but let's ask them first before you post it on your socials or share it with friends. If they protest, but it's cute, you can follow up with, I know you love capturing moments, and I'm also supporting their privacy. You're naming the value and boundary at the same time. And sometimes things get so busy and you're not there to see who's taking pics of what. So a group text or email before you leave the gathering might say something like, General ask, please don't post pics of our family members on your socials. We don't mind group photos, but please don't tag any of us. Thanks so much. 5. Redirect criticism without collapsing into explanations. When a relative comments with disapproval, try a neutral response. Some examples are, they're taking care of themselves right now. This helps them settle into the environment. This strategy works for them. Avoid long explanations that can make you feel like you're on trial. You're not convincing anyone. You're holding a boundary. And 6, repair with your child afterward if there's any tension that spills over. If your kiddo saw or heard criticism, acknowledge it. You might say, I noticed someone made a comment about your tablet. That wasn't about you doing something wrong. You were taking care of yourself. This kind of repair strengthens self-trust and reduces shame. If choosing one practice feels easier than all of them, start there and see how it feels. Small shifts have powerful ripple effects. So now take a breath and check in with yourself. Did this topic stir up heat in your body, relief you didn't expect, or thoughts about past gatherings where you felt caught in the middle? Let yourself notice how that shows up for you. These automatic reactions show the deep care you hold for your child, plus the old stories that still live in your body. Let them be here without pushing them away. Ask yourself what this reaction wants you to understand about your own history and what it hopes for your child in the future. The heart of this is simple. You get to honor your child's needs even when others don't understand them. You get to choose connection over rote performance. You get to protect your child's right to regulation, privacy, and autonomy. You're reshaping patterns that have lasted generations, and every intentional moment counts. If you found this episode helpful, I'd love it if you shared it with a friend who's also navigating a family full of opinions about screen use. Remember that you're not the only one doing this kind of parenting in a world that often expects children to just adjust to adult comfort without question. Other listeners are on this same journey, imagining new ways families can relate with care, dignity, and mutual respect. How are you responding to comments about your child's screen use these days? Let me know. You can contact me via Instagram at BKParents, that's BKPARENTS, or email me at parenthood@quickanddirtytips.com. If you're feeling alone in your parenting journey, head to my website at brooklynparenttherapy.com, where you can join my newsletter to learn about upcoming community parent events. I'm Dr. Nanika Coor. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week. Project Parenthood is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast. Thanks to the team, audio engineer Dan Firebend, Holly Hutchings, director of podcasts, advertising operations specialist Morgan Christensen, marketing manager Rebecca Sebastian, and thanks also to our contractor, Nat Hoops.